Hannah and Jared postponed their upcoming wedding after their last mission together. The entire EOD unit was shocked. Hannah was clearly head over heels for Jared. They had been in love for 7 years, and she had even publicly declared she wouldn't marry anyone else. But there was something they didn't know. At the scene of the bomb disposal mission, the perpetrator had planted over a dozen bombs. Hannah, however, had given the last bulletproof vest to the rookie on their team, telling Jared, "Cody doesn't have your experience. You're the veteran here, so cut him some slack." Jared didn't object. He didn't even say a word. He just submitted his application for an overseas deployment after the mission was over. After that last mission, the rest of the EOD unit started looking at Jared with even more disapproval. Although he had successfully completed the mission and disarmed the bombs, the team's new golden boy, Cody, had been injured during the withdrawal. Hannah, his fiancée, her eyes bright red, rushed the rookie directly into the operating room. Then she spun around, grabbed Jared's shoulders, and demanded viciously, "Why didn't you go save Cody? How could you just stand there and watch him get hurt?" The doubt and anxiety in her eyes hit Jared like a club to the head, making his skull throb with a dull ache. She seemed to have forgotten that the entire team's mission was to disarm the bombs and rescue the hostages. As an EOD specialist, the ability to save oneself was the most basic qualification. Their colleagues, never ones to miss a good drama, stood by and poured gasoline on the fire. He must have been jealous that Cody is the team favorite. That's why he didn't save him on purpose. "I never knew you were so petty. We shouldn't go on missions with him anymore. The guy's dangerous." So many people, each adding their 2 cents, making it sound as if Jared was the one to blame for the whole incident. They had also forgotten that it was because of his outstanding performance that their lives had been saved. And yet, here they were, gathered together to blame him. At that thought, his face showed no anger, no sense of being wronged. He just slowly brushed the dust off his clothes, looked up and said, "Fine. From now on, you all can team up with Cody. I wish you the best of luck on your future missions." At his words, the room went silent. They didn't want to admit it, but the entire EOD unit had a 100% mission success rate precisely because of Jared. Only then did Hannah realize she had gone too far. She quickly softened her tone, trying to backtrack. "Jared, I was just worried. Cody's still in the ER, and I was mainly scared something would happen to him. You know he's the youngest on the team, right?" Jared gave a perfunctory reply, a self-mocking thought crossing his mind. He and Cody were the same age, but Hannah always acted as if Cody were younger. She even called him Cody affectionately, while she just called him Jared. Ever since the rookie joined the EOD unit, all the special treatment she used to give Jared had slowly been transferred to him. And yet, they were the couple who had been together for 7 years and were supposed to get married next week. At this moment, they felt like complete strangers. Jared pressed his lips together bitterly. A sharp, stabbing pain shot through his injured arm. His eyes swept across the room, and he realized that the entire bomb squad, including his fiancée, was completely unharmed. He was the only one who was hurt, and they were accusing him of leaving someone to die. If they cared so much about Cody, why didn't they save him themselves? The continuous pain made his face go pale, and his whole body trembled uncontrollably. He weakly pushed Hannah away and staggered off to find an orthopedic doctor. He wouldn't be surprised if a bone was broken. The woman behind him didn't move. A quick glance from the corner of his eye showed Hannah staring blankly in the direction of the ICU. Of course, the apple of her eye, Cody, was still unconscious. How could she possibly notice his injury? He silently turned back, his nose twitching slightly, using all his strength to suppress the pain in his eyes. It would be a disgrace if people mistook him, an elite bomb disposal expert, for showing weakness because of pain. He roughly wiped his face, trying to scrub away the negative emotions. Just then, Hannah's voice came from behind him again. "Jared, I'll go with you." For some reason, he felt no joy at her words, just a complicated feeling he couldn't quite name. Dr. Chun, a familiar face, looked grim. "Jared, if you'd come in any later, you would have lost this arm. I'd like to see how you're going to be a hero then. And you, Dr. Chun turned to Hannah, his expression just as sour. Your boyfriend acts like he has a death wish on every mission. Can't you talk some sense into him?" Remembering her own harsh accusations just moments ago, Hannah guiltily avoided his gaze and nodded meekly. Jared quickly agreed, smiling and saying a few placating words. Dr. Chun looked intimidating, but he was just looking out for him. He always remembered those who were good to him, but he could also tell when a heart had changed. The hospital nurses were busy, so Hannah, as if trying to make up for something, volunteered to grab the first aid kit and treat Jared's wounds. He didn't stop her, just gave a faint nod. Gazing at the woman so close to him, he felt a sense of disorientation. They had started dating in high school, encouraging each other to apply to the police academy, and became the model couple everyone on campus envied. Jared still remembered how, when his parents died instantly in a car crash, she was the one who held him and comforted him all night, helping him handle the funeral arrangements as his future wife. From the day they started dating, Hannah had brought him breakfast every single day without fail, always his favorites. Even when classmates teased her for taking care of her future husband, she did it with joy. During every thunderstorm, Hannah was always by Jared's side. She knew his parents' death was a wound that would never heal, so she swore an oath before their memorial photos. "As long as I'm here, I will love him for a lifetime and build a warm home with him." Jared had believed her completely, but he never expected Hannah's lifetime to be so short, only 7 years. "Jared, does it hurt?" "Not as much as it did a minute ago." Hannah froze, then gave an awkward laugh before changing the subject. "With your hand injured like this, you can't drive. I'll take you home later and make you something good to eat." Jared nodded, the corner of his cold lips twitching into a barely noticeable curve. Just then, the phone in Hannah's pocket began to vibrate incessantly. She put down the cotton swab and answered the call. "Hannah, Cody's awake, but he won't take his medicine. He's been asking for you ever since he woke up." The colleague's voice on the phone was clear. Even though Jared didn't want to listen, he heard every word. After hanging up, Hannah glanced at Jared and said apologetically, "I'm just going to go check on him. I'll be right back. Okay?" The slight curve on Jared's lips vanished, replaced by his usual stoic expression. He grunted in response. Hannah turned and left without a hint of hesitation. His gaze fell on the half-cleaned wound. Jared sat there for a long moment before calling a familiar nurse for help, then stared blankly out the window. He remembered how Hannah used to be the most anxious about him getting hurt. During every cross-country training session at the academy, when he'd come back covered in scrapes and bruises, she, also injured, would rush him to the hospital. She wouldn't even look at her own wounds until she confirmed he was okay. She would then stay by his bedside all day, bringing him water and food, impossible to shoo away. What a far cry from now. The nurse gently cleaned his wounds, finally finishing his entire arm. At the end, she asked apologetically, "Did I hurt you?" Jared quickly shook his head. The nurse let out a sigh of relief. "It's just, I saw your eyes were red." His eyes were red? Jared quickly wiped them and felt a cold wetness on his hand. He waited for a long time, but there was no sign of Hannah. He said goodbye to Dr. Chun and took a cab home alone. At 10 p.m., while Jared was eating instant ramen, a text from Hannah came through. "Jared, have you eaten? Cody is in a lot of pain and insists I stay here with him. You go on home. I'll bring you breakfast tomorrow." At almost the exact same moment, a series of photos popped up in the EOD unit's group chat, posted by Cody. He opened them. Every picture was of Hannah's specialty dishes, all light and suitable for a patient. Those used to be exclusively for him, but now they were for someone else. His colleagues in the group chat started hyping it up. "Looks like our Hannah is cooking for Cody again. A feast fit for a prince. Not just anyone gets this kind of treatment. Seriously, Hannah's different with Cody. She's spoiling him rotten." Cody, always the drama queen, saw his teammates' comments and even tagged Jared with a fake innocent post. "Hey Jared, just borrowing Hannah for tonight. I'll give her back tomorrow. Don't be mad. Okay?" Seeing that Jared hadn't replied, Hannah, worried the new guy would be embarrassed, quickly responded in the group chat. "He won't be. Your boy Jared is a bigger man than that. Jared ignored the whole soap opera unfolding in the group chat. He just stared at the photos of the delicious food, then looked at the instant ramen in front of him, and suddenly lost his appetite. He sighed after a long moment, running a hand through his hair in frustration. But the oppression in his heart felt like it had been set on fire, burning him with a searing pain. He picked up his phone and opened his chat with Hannah. Why did you have to change? Do you really like Cody that much? His fingers flew across the screen, but then he deleted the words one by one. After a long pause, he washed up and lay down quietly in bed. The next day, as soon as he got to the station, Jared saw a bag of breakfast and 3 bright red roses on his desk. Needless to say, it was from Hannah. His cold, numb heart warmed up just a little. Although Jared usually projected a tough, no-nonsense exterior for work, he was actually a romantic at heart. He loved romance and he loved red roses. All around him, his teammates were looking on with envy. He smiled, peeling an egg while scrolling through the team announcements. Suddenly, a notification popped up on his phone. Jared opened it. It was a new post on Cody's social feed. In the photo, Cody was holding a huge bouquet of red roses, standing by a hospital room window, smiling and flashing a peace sign. Next to him, a woman's hand was holding a glass of milk to his lips. He had even blatantly captioned it. A bouquet beats 3 single stems. Your 7 years can't beat my 3 months. Time to step aside. Jared's eyes locked onto the hand. The egg-peeling motion stopped abruptly, his hand frozen in mid-air. The mole on the wrist, the size of a grain of rice, belonged to Hannah. His gaze fell on the 3 red roses beside him, which now seemed blindingly garish. He snatched the roses and the breakfast off his desk and threw them all into the trash can. His teammate in front of him asked, stunned, "Why aren't you eating?" Jared glanced at the trash can. "It looks disgusting," he said flatly. "Lost my appetite." Just then, Hannah walked in. The moment she saw Jared, her eyes lit up with a doting smile. "How did you sleep last night?" she asked. Jared looked up and gave her a quiet, emotionless glance. "Fine." Hannah nodded and pulled a pair of tactical gloves from her pocket, handing them to Jared with a familiar look of concern. "I saw your gloves were worn out yesterday, so I got you a new pair. They're your size. Try them on." As an elite bomb disposal expert, Jared went through gloves faster than anyone on the team, averaging a pair a week. A teammate had once snidely commented on his high consumption rate, saying he used as many as 3 other people combined. Only Hannah knew it was because he spent so much time practicing. But Jared never explained. Feeling the perfectly sized, comfortable gloves on his hands, Jared knew they weren't standard issue. Hannah had bought them for him with her own money. "You spent your own money again? It's worth it for you." This familiar exchange was just like old times. The teammate in front, Alex, turned around to tease them. "You 2 lovebirds or something else, about to get married and still talking sweet like that. It's making me jealous." Hannah smiled shyly, but Jared felt no joy. He couldn't help but wonder if Cody was about to post a picture of the exact same pair of gloves on his social feed. Proof that whatever Jared had, he had too. He stared at his phone, almost masochistically, his face tense. Hannah, standing beside him, noticed something was wrong and gently nudged him. "What's wrong? You look awful." Jared gave a self-deprecating laugh and deflected. "Didn't sleep well. I'll turn in early tonight." Hannah shot him a disapproving look. "I'll be checking up on you tonight. If you're not in bed early, I'm knocking on your door." Another round of teasing erupted from the sidelines. Everyone was laughing and shouting. "Hannah's so considerate. A true romantic. The pride of the EOD unit." The room was filled with laughter. In a corner no one could see, Jared gave a bitter smile. He didn't understand. Hannah's heart had clearly changed. So why did she keep playing the part of a devoted lover in front of him? What was the point? As if to confirm his suspicions, after everyone in the office had gone to the training grounds, Jared stood at Cody's workstation and began to search through it carefully. The next second, he saw a drawer full of neatly stacked gloves, the exact same fabric and color as the ones Hannah had given him. and embroidered on the cuff were the words Cody. Jared pulled the gloves from his pocket and unfolded the cuff. 2 words came into view. In that instant, a flood of memories washed over him. The laughter of sharing a single milk tea in high school, Hannah holding him as they wept together over his parents' bodies on a stormy night, the joy of lifting her up and spinning her around in public when he was accepted into the police academy. In just a few minutes, those fragments faded, inch by inch, as if consumed by flames, turning to ash. "Hannah, I'm done with you." Jared didn't confront her. He continued his training and studies as usual, completing his daily tasks. The next day, however, he filled out his own name on the International EOD mission application form distributed by the commander. That afternoon, Jared was called into the commander's office. "Aren't you about to get married? Why are you applying for an overseas deployment? This mission is for a minimum of 3 years in Danak. It's a minefield every 3 steps. Every family there has been affected by landmines. It's a high-risk zone. Do you want to reconsider? Think it over and come back." The commander looked at his most outstanding specialist, his heart heavy. If Jared left, he wouldn't have any top-tier operators left. "Commander, I've made up my mind. I want to go." The commander sighed internally, but seeing the determination on Jared's face, he couldn't press the issue further and had to concede. "All right, I'll start the paperwork for you. Talk to Hannah about this properly. Don't get into a fight." The commander advised him earnestly. Jared agreed and turned to leave. After leaving the office, he didn't go to discuss anything with Hannah. Instead, he buried himself in the computer lab, meticulously researching the country of Danak online. For 3 straight days, he was either in the computer lab or training relentlessly on the field. His unusual behavior even made his teammate Alex suspicious. "Did you and Hannah have a fight?" Jared shook his head. Alex stared at him dubiously. "Something feels off between you two," he said mysteriously. Before he could finish, a cheer erupted from behind them. It turned out to be the day the team's favorite, Cody, was being discharged from the hospital. Hannah and a few colleagues had put in a special request to go pick him up and bring him back to the unit. He looked healthy, with color in his cheeks, and walked with a spring in his step, laughing and joking with his teammates. He seemed to have fully recovered. "I owe my safe return to all of your care. Tonight, dinner at the Starlight Room is on me." "Whoa, the Starlight Room." The colleagues cheered, their jaws dropping. It was the most exclusive restaurant in all of Chicago. If it weren't for Cody, they might not get a chance to go there for years. At that thought, they looked at Cody with even more enthusiasm. This wasn't the first time Cody had treated the team since he joined. In fact, a large part of why he became the team favorite was his wealthy background and generosity. He had won everyone over with his money in the shortest amount of time. "Jared, you have to come tonight. You've missed every other time, and Hannah never has as much fun without you." Cody's smiling remark instantly shifted everyone's attention to Jared. Even Hannah moved a step closer, tugging on his sleeve, urging him to agree. Someone muttered quietly, "What makes Jared good enough for Hannah? I think Cody is a much better match for her. Perfect pair." The voice was soft, but just loud enough for everyone present to hear. The scene fell into a sudden silence. Cody, standing in the center of the crowd, had a flicker in his eyes, his smile deepening. And Hannah, standing beside him, acted as if she hadn't heard a thing, exchanging glances with Cody. At that moment, Jared suddenly felt tired. A 3-person relationship was more exhausting than training for 3 days and 3 nights straight. With that thought, Jared nodded. "Okay, thanks for treating." At 6 p.m., the team drove in a convoy to the Starlight Room. As they passed the commander's office, he called out to Jared. "The paperwork is done. Come by my office tomorrow to sign it." "Okay." Hannah, who had been following close behind, came up and asked quizzically, "Sign what?" Jared looked at her steadily for a moment before replying, "The commendation forms for the last mission." Hannah's eyes narrowed, but she didn't ask any more questions. The 2 of them caught up with the main group and got into a car. Cody, showing off his wealth, had booked the entire private room and ordered every single one of the Starlight Room's signature dishes. As soon as the meal began, he started pressuring Jared to drink. "Jared, you're the best on our team. I toast to you. I'll be counting on you to look out for me in the future." Jared kept his head down and said nothing. Cody held his glass, smiling at him. The noisy table gradually quieted down. Alex, sitting next to him, quickly stood up to smooth things over. "Jared can't drink. How about I take this one for him?" Someone scoffed. "Who are you to him? Why should you drink for him?" Alex gave an awkward laugh, and his hand holding the glass lowered. Hannah had just returned from a phone call. Seeing the situation, she looked conflicted. After a moment's hesitation, she leaned close to Jared's ear and whispered, "There are so many people here. How about you just take a small sip?" Jared, who had been unresponsive, finally moved. He slowly turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto Hannah. He asked again, "What did you say?" A guilty look flashed across Hannah's face. She hesitated, but ultimately didn't dare to press him further and sheepishly fell silent. No one knew that Jared's parents had been killed on a stormy night, run over by a drunk truck driver. Their bodies were mangled, and blood was everywhere. From that day on, he hated alcohol and was terrified of thunderstorms. Hannah knew all of this. She was the one who had held him, stayed with him, and whispered in his trembling ear, "Jared, don't be afraid, you still have me." But what was she doing now? Helping another man pressure him to drink? In that instant, Jared felt something inside his chest crash and crumble. His whole body began to tremble. He looked at the silent Hannah, then glanced at Cody across the table. He took a deep breath and downed the shot of liquor in one gulp. The silent room erupted with noise as teammates cheered "yeah." But Jared's face was as pale as snow, completely drained of color. Only his eyes seemed to burn with something, a hint of grim determination. The burning in his stomach churned his insides, making it almost impossible to breathe. He rushed to the bathroom and hunched over the toilet, vomiting violently. Heave after heave, tears streamed down his face. At that moment, he suddenly couldn't tell which hurt more, his burning stomach or his broken heart. No one followed him. He knew Hannah was still in the private room, standing in front of Cody, smiling and taking drinks for him, just as she had done for Jared 1,000 times before. But this time, the person she was protecting had changed. After an unknown amount of time, a composed Jared walked out of the bathroom. Perhaps even the heavens were mourning Jared's lost love, as the clear sky suddenly opened up and began to pour. As the rain fell, a flash of white light split the sky, followed by the roar of distant thunder. It felt like an ice pick plunging deep into Jared's heart, pinning him to the spot, unable to move. The images of his parents' mangled bodies and the blood-soaked ground flooded his mind again. Jared shivered violently. He shakily pulled out his phone and dialed Hannah's number, but a man's voice answered. "Hey Jared, what's up?" Hannah went to the front desk to get some condoms. She said doing it drunk is more exciting. The words "Hannah, I'm scared" caught in Jared's throat, and he swallowed them down with all his might. He didn't listen to another word and hung up the phone. Stumbling, he disappeared into the night. By the time Jared got home, he was soaked to the bone, looking like he'd been pulled from a river. He sat numbly in the bathtub, the image of Hannah urging him to drink replaying in his mind, and the wetness in his eyes grew heavier. He sat there for a long time, then got up, dried himself, got dressed, and turned off his phone. He buried himself under the covers, wrapped tightly in his comforter, like a lifeless cocoon. The next morning, when Jared returned to the EOD unit, he had regained his composure, though his face was deathly pale. Alex asked with concern, "Why do you look so pale? Are you not feeling well?" Jared shook his head with a bitter smile. The shot of liquor he'd defiantly drunk last night had triggered his chronic stomach problems, and his stomach was churning with pain. "I'm fine. I'm just going to the infirmary to get some medicine." He waved a weak hand and started to head out, but at the doorway, he ran into Hannah and Cody entering together. Hannah frowned slightly, her tone a mix of concern and accusation. "Why couldn't I reach you on your phone last night? I took Cody back to his room and then couldn't find you anywhere. Are you still mad at me?" She put on a good-natured act, but only Jared, who knew her well, could tell she was actually angry. He simply shook his head. I went home by myself last night. He started to walk past her, but a sharp pain in his stomach made his palms break out in a cold sweat, and his forehead beaded with it. But Hannah seemed not to notice, turning to speak to Cody beside her. I told you Jared wouldn't mind. You worry too much. The doting tone in her voice made Jared's heart tremble. He clenched his jaw, and just as he was about to leave, he was startled by something furry on the ground. He instinctively took a few steps back. It was a cat. Seeing his frightened reaction, Cody quickly scooped up the cat. Jared, my bad about last night. I shouldn't have made you drink. Hannah said you like pets, so I brought my cat over to apologize. Want to hold him? But Jared, terrified, retreated even further. Others might not know, but Hannah should have known he was allergic to cats. The pets he liked were mutts, not cats. Jared's face was pale. He clutched his stomach with one hand and shook his head, forcing a smile. Thanks, but I'm allergic to cats. I'll pass. At his words, Cody's face fell. He pouted and said, Jared, so you really don't like me. You won't drink my toast, you won't hold my cat. If you hate me, you can just say it. You don't have to go to the trouble of making up so many excuses. As he spoke, he glanced at Hannah, his eyes welling up with tears. The next second, Hannah's coaxing voice predictably sounded in his ear. Why don't you just hold him for a second? Cody just wants to make it up to you. The surrounding teammates chimed in with snide remarks. Well, the elite is different, isn't he? Always pulling rank in the unit, disrupting team unity. The guy is practically begging you. Why are you still acting so high and mighty? Jared's brow furrowed tightly, his knuckles turning white. Just then, Alex pushed through the crowd and hurried to support the pale Jared. Hold what cat? Can't you see his stomach is killing him? He retorted. With that, he started to lead Jared toward the door. Seeing this, Hannah rushed after them, asking repeatedly, Jared, why didn't you tell me your stomach hurt? Why are you so stubborn? When are you going to change this attitude? Jared wanted to say something, but when he looked up and saw the faint hint of resentment in her eyes, he silently closed his mouth. But Cody spoke up from behind. Hannah, the kitten needs you to feed him. He only recognizes you. He didn't finish the sentence, but it felt like he had said everything. Jared said with difficulty, Hannah, you should go. Cody's kitten is waiting for you. Hannah looked torn. She glanced at Cody, then back at Jared, and explained, I'll be right back. Wait for me. With that, she turned and ran toward Cody. Only then did Jared understand that in Hannah's heart, he couldn't compare to Cody, nor could he compare to Cody's cat. Those years of love, he was probably the only one who still foolishly remembered them. He sighed inwardly and turned to Alex, saying softly, Let's go. Sensing Jared's sadness, the usually chatty young man fell unusually silent. After the unit doctor examined the wound on Jared's arm and prescribed a few painkillers, he finally spoke with a smile. The wound on your arm is starting to scab over. It's nothing serious. I heard you distinguished yourself again on the last mission. Congratulations, the doctor said cheerfully. Jared nodded his thanks. After a few more words, they left the infirmary. Alex's face was alight with excitement, and he chattered on. You're the only one on our team with a commendation medal now. That's amazing. Hannah is going to be ecstatic. A wedding and a medal. Talk about a double whammy of good news, right? Alex spoke animatedly, his face beaming with genuine joy. But the man opposite him showed no emotion, remaining unervingly calm. Jared had never cared about medals. Every mission was a gamble with death. Survive one day, live one day. As long as he could complete the mission and return to the unit alive, that was his greatest wish. Thinking of this, Jared looked up at the bright sun in the blue sky, a smile appearing on his face. He turned and thanked Alex again. When they returned to the office with the medicine, Hannah walked over with a concerned look, eagerly handing him a heating pad. Put this on your stomach. It should make you feel a bit better. Jared's gaze fixed on the heating pad, but he didn't move. He didn't understand. He truly didn't understand what Hannah was thinking. She had clearly fallen for Cody, yet she continued to act so devoted to him. Wasn't she tired of splitting her heart in two? But he didn't have time to ask. The next second, the meeting bell rang, summoning everyone. He discreetly pushed the heating pad aside and followed the others into the conference room. Once everyone was assembled, the commander walked in, full of energy. He announced loudly, for his outstanding performance on the last mission, Comrade Jared is hereby awarded the Commendation Medal. I object. As soon as the words were out, all eyes in the room turned to Hannah. The commander's eyes widened, his face expressionless, but he gestured with his eyes for her to continue. Hannah couldn't bring herself to look at Jared. Her burning gaze was fixed on Cody in the front row, and her tone was firm. Cody was seriously injured during this mission and should have a share in the credit. The honor can't go to Jared alone. The team members won't accept it. The air conditioning was on in the conference room, but the atmosphere felt heavy and oppressive. The commander let out an abrupt laugh and walked slowly toward Hannah. Do I need your acceptance? He said coldly. This is a decision from high command. It's an announcement, not a request for your opinion. You won't accept it. What good does that do? If getting injured was enough for a commendation, everyone in this unit would have a Distinguished Service Cross by now. The commander's powerful voice spoke word by word, and Hannah's face gradually turned pale. Jared could even see her tremble slightly. He could feel Hannah's gaze on him from the corner of her eye, pleading for him to help her out. But this time he had no intention of speaking up. The commander's voice continued, Hannah, aren't you Jared's fiancée? Why are you helping an outsider fight for credit? The room was silent, and Hannah's face flushed crimson. After a long moment, she replied righteously, we don't discuss personal matters during work hours. The entire team. Hannah's words were cut off by the commander's sharp interruption. This matter is settled. I don't want to hear any more discussion about it. After the meeting was dismissed, Hannah, with her head down and ignoring the varied expressions of the others, cornered Jared. I didn't mean anything else just now. I just felt that it's not easy for a young guy like Cody, so I wanted to speak up for him. She watched Jared as she spoke, and after a few seconds, she couldn't hold back a quiet complaint. The commander embarrassed me in front of everyone just now. Why didn't you help me? I feel like you've been getting colder and colder towards me lately. Hearing this, Jared almost laughed out of anger. The fire that had been simmering inside him for so long finally erupted. His eyes were sharp with a chilling insight that seemed to pierce right through the familiar yet strange woman before him. I don't get it either. Why did you help him and not me? Hannah froze, her lips pressed into a thin line. But Jared's questioning continued. Did he disarm the bomb that day? Hannah half shook her head. Who did? You did. After a long pause, Hannah's voice was as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Then why did you help him steal the credit? He emphasized the last two words, and the sound made Hannah's entire body jolt. If she had been asking for credit for the whole team today, he could have understood. But he couldn't tolerate Hannah going against her conscience, skipping over all the other teammates to fight for credit for Cody. He didn't deserve it. He looked up, a half smile on his face. Hannah, he said, let's break up. The woman froze, her face a mask of disbelief. It took her a long moment to process his words. She frowned. Jared, we're getting married next week. What kind of joke is this? She paused, as if making a decision, then took a breath. I know you're angry about what just happened. I apologize. It won't happen again. Okay? Jared sighed inwardly. He didn't know what to say. You can't wake someone who's pretending to be asleep. It was useless. She was playing dumb and refusing to admit anything. Besides, he was leaving anyway. Let her be. As long as she was happy. With that thought, Jared nodded with a wooden expression. Hannah, beside him, quietly breathed a sigh of relief. She grabbed his hand, acting as if nothing had happened. My dad is visiting today. Come over to my place for dinner tonight. Jared's steps faltered, a sense of resistance rising within him. Although he and Hannah were at the stage of planning their wedding, her father had never liked him. He was a well-educated teacher, But in private, his words were always barbed, constantly trying to get Hannah to break up with him. For years, Jared had tried everything to smooth things over with him, but it was no use. Eventually, he gave up. He wasn't money, he couldn't make everyone like him. He curled his lip, thinking with self-mockery that now, Mr. Vance's wish was about to come true. After work, Hannah drove Jared to her home. But the person who opened the door was, surprisingly, Cody. He greeted them with a wide smile. "You're back. Uncle made a ton of delicious food tonight." Jared's questioning gaze turned to Hannah. The woman awkwardly scratched her head and explained in a low voice, "Cody helped me pick up my dad today, so he's staying for dinner." Jared didn't say anything. He changed his shoes and went inside. Seeing that he didn't seem angry, Hannah didn't pay it much mind and went into the kitchen to help. Soon, the four of them were sitting at the table. Hannah's father was as cool and distant as ever, but whenever he turned to Cody, that coolness instantly melted into fatherly affection. He warmly urged him to eat more. While talking, he kept putting food on Cody's plate and even kept giving Hannah looks, signaling her to take better care of him. When he turned to look at Jared, the smile vanished from his face. A man should prioritize his family after marriage. A career is important, but you also need to take care of my daughter. If my daughter is wronged in any way, then there's no need for this marriage. The moment he said this, the atmosphere at the dinner table turned cold. Hannah quickly called out, "Dad, let's eat first.
I'm starving."
Despite his dissatisfaction with Jared, hearing that his daughter was hungry, Mr. Vance couldn't say any more and just mumbled, "Eat, eat." But Jared, sitting beside them, had no appetite at all. The table was filled with spicy dishes. The sight of the oily red chili peppers made his already fragile stomach ache faintly. Mr. Vance kept saying, "Cody, eat up. These are all your favorite dishes." And they were. Cody's bowl was piled high with food, while Jared's was filled only with plain white rice. The two of them looked like a father and son, while he felt like a stranger who had forced his way in. Cody's eyes shone with a triumphant look, like a victorious rooster. After fussing over Cody, Hannah finally seemed to notice Jared. She put a few bites of vegetables in his bowl and told him to eat up. Jared smiled bitterly to himself. At least she still remembered he didn't eat spicy food. After an agonizing hour, Jared stood up to leave. "Mr. Vance, thank you for your hospitality. I'm leaving." But Hannah's father acted as if he didn't see him, continuing to talk to Cody with his head turned. Hannah awkwardly got up to see him out, trying to smooth things over. "My dad just likes younger guys. They hit it off." She noticed Jared was unusually quiet tonight and felt a vague unease, adding, "I'll drive you back." As soon as she said it, her father's voice came from inside. "You drive Cody. He lives farther away." Jared, who hadn't said a word, now looked up. He blinked, a careless smile on his face. "You take him. I'll get back on my own." With that, he turned and walked away without looking back, leaving a conflicted Hannah standing there, stunned. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but she felt that Jared was both very close and very far away. A few seconds later, she shook her head with a scoff. They were getting married in 3 days. What was she thinking? But what Hannah didn't know was that Jared was not going to marry her. He had just confirmed his departure date with the commander. It was in 3 days. The commander sighed one last time, emphasizing again, "If this is about Hannah, you really don't have to go overseas. I can transfer you to another unit so you won't feel awkward." He truly couldn't bear to lose this key officer and was still trying to persuade him at the last minute. Jared pressed his lips together, a slight curve appearing. "Thank you, Commander. Wait for me. I'll be back." Seeing that persuasion was useless, the commander didn't insist. They said their final goodbyes and hung up. Just then, a text from Hannah came through. "We're going to the wedding planners tomorrow afternoon to try on our formal wear. I've already requested the day off." She then sent a rapid succession of photos showing seating arrangements, invitation designs, and other small details. In that moment, Jared almost couldn't stop himself from telling her. He wasn't going through with the wedding, but reason told him to wait just a little longer. The next afternoon, When Jared arrived at the wedding planning company, Hannah was already there. Strangely, when she saw him standing at the door, she had a hesitant look on her face. "What's wrong?" Jared asked. Hannah forced a smile and replied, "Nothing." But the next moment, the dressing room door was pulled open from the inside. A groom was already sitting there. Jared smiled, about to nod in greeting. But when he saw the groom's face as he turned around, the smile froze on his face. The man was none other than Cody. He seemed completely oblivious, smiling and greeting Jared. "Jared, you're just in time. I just finished trying on the tux for you. What do you think? Does it look good?" Seeing Jared's silence, he turned and asked Hannah with a grin, "Hannah, do I look good in this? Do I look like a groom?" Hannah didn't dare to look at Jared's face and nodded guiltily. But Cody didn't seem satisfied with her answer. He changed his tone to one of concern. "Jared, this tux looks good on me, but I don't know if it will look good on you. After all, everyone on the team agrees I'm the most handsome. Not like you, all rough around the edges." He paused, as if realizing he'd misspoken, and added, "That's not what I said. That's what Mr. Vance said." Jared remained calm, as still as a mountain. The stylist was frightened by the bizarre atmosphere, standing frozen to the side, afraid to speak. It was Hannah who grabbed Jared's hand and explained repeatedly, "My dad saw he was off today, so he had him come along to help give his opinion." Jared jerked his hand away from Hannah's, a cold smile forming on his face. "My wedding, my tux. Why do I need an outsider's opinion? Since you and your dad want his opinion so badly, let him be the groom. It looks like he can't wait anyway." After saying this, he gave the two of them a light, dismissive glance and turned to leave. He paid no attention to the woman's desperate shouts behind him. As soon as he got in his car, Alex's call came through. The moment he answered, he heard his panicked voice. "Jared, emergency mission. Get back to the unit now." Without a second thought, he sped back to the unit, changed into his gear in seconds, and joined the main team. This mission was extremely difficult. A terrorist had planted heavy explosives under a bridge, intending to destroy it and cause mass casualties. All the other explosives had been found and disarmed, but the last few were a new type of bomb, CT-4, and everyone was at a loss. The team pinned their hopes on Jared. Dressed in his bomb suit, he worked on the explosives with abnormal calm. But the detonator was connected to two wires, and he wasn't sure which one to cut. As the seconds ticked by, he shouted and cut the yellow wire. You could have heard a pin drop. There was no sound. Just as everyone was cheering, Cody shoved Jared aside and ran toward Hannah up ahead. But he didn't see that there was still a loose shell on the ground. The next second, there was a loud bang. Hannah didn't hesitate for a second. She lunged toward Cody, shielding him with her body. At that moment, she seemed to have forgotten that Jared was much closer to the explosive. In a flash, Jared saw the woman's action, but strangely, he felt no pain, no sadness. His heart felt like it had hurt enough. There was only numbness. As if he had just confirmed something he already knew, he felt a sense of release and made one final decision. The last time, when Hannah handed the bomb suit to Cody in front of him, he had thought that in the near future, the person she would be willing to protect with her life might no longer be him. But when he first joined the bomb squad, she was the one who would have shielded him from an explosion with her own body. So he wasn't her one and only, just one of many. He closed his eyes, and a tear streamed down his face. As a series of bangs sounded in his ears, everything went dark. When he woke up, he was lying in a bed. He felt weak all over, with a throbbing pain in his abdomen. The doctor told him there were no major injuries, but the impact had caused irreversible damage to his body. In that moment, Jared was completely numb, like a lifeless statue. Only the large tears rolling from the corners of his eyes revealed a rare vulnerability for a man. He had originally decided to cancel this plan before leaving. Perhaps this was heaven's best arrangement. He collected himself and spoke, his eyes red. "I need you to do me one last favor." After the doctor left, he covered his face with his hands and wept silently. Just then, there was a noise at the door. He quickly wiped away his tears and pretended he had just woken up. Alex pushed the door open, and seeing him awake, his eyes turned red with joy. "Jared, why are your eyes so swollen? Were you crying too?" He shook his head and said hoarsely, "Probably an infection." The unobservant Alex didn't suspect a thing, just showing the pure joy of surviving a close call, and asked Jared to move his limbs. Good thing that new nanotech bomb suit held up this time, otherwise, he didn't finish the sentence, but they both knew they had once again snatched a life back from the jaws of death. It was a light shell, and I ducked behind a sandbag. "I'm fine." Alex laughed through his tears. "You say that every time." Just then, Hannah rushed in. Seeing he was okay, she let out a long sigh of relief. "Thank God you're okay. You have no idea how worried I was." Alex scoffed, glaring at her sideways. "You were worried? Then why were you hovering over Cody the whole time and ignoring Jared? Anyone who didn't know better would think you were his girlfriend." Hannah gave an unnatural smile. "You were here, weren't you? Besides, no one was with him, so I just looked after him a bit more. We're all colleagues." She then specifically asked Jared, "You understand, right?" He didn't answer, just said to Alex, "Go home and rest." "I'm fine." Alex nodded and turned to leave. The hospital room fell quiet, thick with awkwardness. Hannah wanted to say something more, but Jared had already closed his eyes, clearly unwilling to talk. Hannah fell silent, feeling rebuffed. After resting in the hospital for 2 days, Jared, having no serious injuries, went home. He was leaving tomorrow and still had to pack. He packed only a few changes of clothes and some daily necessities, nothing else. Then he carefully took a file folder out of his pocket. After a long hesitation, he didn't open it. He mailed it along with some old keepsakes, a bank card, and a greeting card. He then typed out a message. "You like him, don't you? I'm giving him and tomorrow's wedding to you as a gift." After sending the message, Jared blocked Cody, relieved he would never have to deal with that toxic drama queen again. At the thought, a flicker of pleasure rose in his numb heart. He took out all his documents, checking them one by one to ensure there would be no issues with his departure tomorrow. Finally, he turned off the light and went to bed. Although he wasn't seriously injured this time, his body hadn't fully recovered. He needed time to rest. With time, you can get over anything, like his parents' deaths and like his 7-year love for Hannah. The next morning, after a call with the commander, he took a car to the airport. Hannah's messages kept coming, but he didn't reply to a single one. There was nothing left to say. He believed she would like the breakup gift he had prepared for her. Hannah stared anxiously at her phone. The feeling of unease that had started this morning was growing stronger. She was about to call Jared when her father stopped her. "He's so in love with you. Is he going to run away? Look at you, all worked up. At this hour, you should be calling the relatives to see if they've arrived. And your colleagues and teammates. Honestly, you're a grown woman and I, an old man, still have to worry about everything," Mr. Vance grumbled, not holding back in the slightest. At 2 p.m., the wedding banquet hall was already full. Hannah waited on the stage, a smile on her face. As the MC repeatedly urged things along, the doors to the hall opened, and a groom in a black suit walked in to the music. But when the groom lifted his head, the smile on her face slowly froze. The groom wasn't Jared. It was Cody. The murmurs from the crowd suddenly grew louder. Her expression changed, and she rushed forward, grabbing Cody's hand tightly. "Why is it you? Where's Jared?" Cody was startled by the anger on her face. His eyes reddened as he struggled in pain. "I don't know. He told me to put on the tux I tried on and come here today." Before she could ask anything else, a man's voice came from the entrance of the hall. "Is there a Hannah here? You have a package." Meanwhile, Jared had already blocked everyone associated with Hannah from his contacts, even the social media posts that held memories of their love. One by one, he deleted them all until nothing was left. Just then, his phone rang. He answered it and Alex's voice came through. "Jared, isn't today your wedding? Why aren't you here?" "It's off. I'm done with her. I'm going on an overseas deployment. Take care." After a few more words, he hung up. He took one last deep look in the direction of the EOD unit, then dragged his luggage onto the plane. "Danak, here I come." When Hannah took the package, a faint voice in her head told her not to open it. Her hand holding the package began to tremble inexplicably. Just then, her father came up to her and said coldly, "Where's Jared? On a special day like today, he didn't go on a mission, did he?" Hannah's brow twitched. She glanced over at the EOD team's table and indeed, a few people were missing. This had happened before. She remembered one time on her birthday. Jared had also been half a day late because of an emergency mission. At that thought, the heart that had been in her throat slowly settled back down. Her father's eyes flickered, and he asked tentatively, "Since Jared isn't here, why don't we have Cody fill in? We can't keep all the guests waiting for the groom." Hannah glanced around the room. Apart from her teammates who knew the groom, the other guests didn't know him anyway. She made a quick decision and nodded, shoving the small package into her pocket. Cody's eyes lit up, the joy and triumph practically spilling out. He immediately took Hannah's hand and led her onto the stage. At this, the teammates who recognized the groom had been swapped looked at each other in confusion. What's going on? Wasn't it supposed to be Jared? Why is it Cody now? Their faces were filled with bewilderment. It was Alex who said listlessly, "Jared's done with her." Another person said, stunned, "Impossible. He's so in love with Hannah. How could he miss the chance to marry her?" Alex scoffed disdainfully. What's so great about a two-timing cheater like her? Cody might treat her like a treasure, but Jared doesn't want her. A vile woman and a vile man are a perfect match. Our Jared deserves better. He didn't say it quietly, and Hannah, standing on the stage, heard him clearly. Her brow furrowed, and she stared intently at Alex, her voice tight. "What do you mean? Where is Jared? Didn't he have an emergency mission?" Alex sneered, looking at her with pity. "What mission? He went to Danak. He, doesn't want you anymore. No matter who you marry, he's not coming back."
Impossible.
Hannah's face turned pale, and she denied it repeatedly with red eyes. She couldn't believe the Jared who loved her so deeply would abandon her. At that moment, she completely forgot how many times she had given him up for someone else. Seeing her pitiful state, Alex kindly offered a suggestion. "Why don't you go ask the commander?" Without a second thought, Hannah dialed the commander's number. A few minutes later, the hand holding the phone dropped limply to her side, her eyes filled with disbelief. Seeing this, her father snapped at her. "I knew this guy was unreliable, and yet you treated him like a treasure. Don't say anything else. Just get through today's ceremony with Cody." With that, he pushed the dazed Hannah onto the stage. Under the rote guidance of the MC, they went through all the motions. The guests that day found it very strange. Why did the bride look like she was at a funeral, while the groom was beaming with joy? The contrast of sorrow and joy created a very bizarre atmosphere. Even after the wedding ended, Hannah, as if she had lost her mind, kept calling Jared's number. But all she heard was the recorded message that the phone was off, over and over again. After dozens of calls, she finally believed it. Jared was gone. He had completely abandoned her. But why? After 7 years together, how could he just let go like that? Why was he so cruel? She asked herself these questions again and again. The phone in her hand fell to the floor with a thud. She leaned against her bedroom door and slowly slid to the floor. Tears streamed down her face, soaking into her shirt. Her gaze fell on her white wedding dress, and as if remembering something, she immediately pulled the small package from her pocket. She rummaged through her drawers and finally found a pair of scissors. Seeing the sender was Jared, she carefully opened the package as if it were a precious treasure. But when she saw the contents of the card and the medical report in the file, her mind went blank, as if a bomb had just exploded. In disbelief, she opened the report and read the few lines on the card over and over again for a good 10 minutes. The words on the loose paper were clear. "Hannah, I'm letting you and Cody be together. The money in the bank card is for what you've spent on me over the years. From now on, we're even." The woman's eyes were bloodshot, her fingertips trembling as she held the documents. Her sobs grew louder, laced with a heartbreaking despair. Hannah cried as she pounded the floor with her fists, each blow like a strike to her own heart, a dull, aching pain. Her hands touched the cold floor, a chill spreading through her. But she seemed not to feel it, continuing to pound relentlessly. Suppressed, broken sobs came from the room. She was filled with regret. She wanted to admit she was wrong. But he was gone. From now on, they had nothing to do with each other. When the plane landed, Jared, having slept soundly the whole way, felt refreshed and energetic. Seeing the sun in Danak, he felt a sense of relief. After a deep exhale, it seemed as though the pent-up frustration in his heart had been swept away. Following the address and transferring between vehicles, he finally arrived at the base command center before dark. The leader didn't say much, just handed him over to a squadron leader. The man was in full camouflage, his face covered in grease paint, his true features hidden.
Hello, I'm Jared.
I've read your file. A very elite bomb disposal expert. Starting tomorrow, I'll be your security detail. We're a team. The man spoke decisively, showing him around the base as he talked. Because he was an experienced elite, the base gave him a single room. After leading him to his room, the squadron leader gave him a few more instructions, then let him be, telling him to get some rest. Jared nodded his thanks. They agreed on a meeting time for the next morning and said their goodbyes. Perhaps because he had slept enough on the plane, he couldn't fall asleep now that he was in bed. He mulled over what the squadron leader had said before he left. Starting tomorrow, they would form a bomb disposal team. He would disarm the bombs, and the other man would provide security, completing missions together. It was a completely different model from what he was used to back home, and he couldn't help but worry if he could adapt. But then he thought, since he was already here, he might as well make the best of it. With that, he pushed aside the distracting thoughts, forced himself to close his eyes, and soon fell into a deep sleep. While Jared was readjusting to life overseas, Hannah, back at the EOD unit, was once again held back for poor training performance. The commander looked at the devastated woman before him and sighed. If this continues, you might have to take off that EOD uniform. Hannah froze, then quickly shook her head, pleading, "Commander, just give me one more chance. I'll get myself together and get back on track as soon as possible." The commander said nothing, just looked into Hannah's pleading eyes. After a long moment, he replied, "Take a few days off and we'll see." He turned and left without waiting for her reply. Watching the commanders retreating back, Hannah stood there stunned, a bitter smile creeping onto her lips. It turned out that without Jared, she couldn't do anything right. After he left, Hannah felt like a part of her soul was missing, leaving an empty void inside. She couldn't eat or sleep properly, and she ignored her father when he tried to talk to her. Back at the EOD unit, even in the circuit training she was usually best at, she made several mistakes in a row. Not to mention the simulated bomb defusal exercises. Her teammates whispered snidely about her behind her back. To her face, they congratulated her, saying that even without Jared, she still had the rookie Cody, a match made in heaven. But in private, they cursed her for being greedy and two-timing, for driving away the unit's best officer. Whenever she thought of Jared, it felt like a knife twisting in her heart, a relentless pain. She clutched her chest, walking dejectedly. Lately, all her bad luck seemed to have come at once. Not only had Jared abandoned her and gone abroad, but even her own father showed no sympathy, constantly pressuring her to get her marriage license with Cody. Ever since Cody had stepped in to play the groom at the wedding, he had been dropping hints to her father, both intentionally and unintentionally, that he was willing to marry her. Her father, already dissatisfied with Jared, saw this as a glimmer of hope and relentlessly tried to set them up. He invited Cody over for dinner every day. She was in a position where she couldn't refuse, but couldn't accept either. It had gotten even worse in the past few days. He had openly invited Cody to stay at their house, leading the entire unit to believe they were in an intimate relationship, and they started calling them the husband and wife team behind her back. Only now did she realize how wrong she had been, how she had crossed a line. She had to get back in shape quickly, apply to go to Danak, and explain everything to Jared face to face. She believed that if she could just make him understand, he would forgive her and come back with her. Hannah thought this with conviction, her fists clenched, her heart filled with confident determination. Lost in thought, she brushed past Cody without noticing. He was used to Hannah's attention, and being so coldly ignored was unbearable. He immediately pouted and grabbed her arm. "Hannah, why have you been so cold to me lately? Jared is gone, but you still have me. He doesn't want you, but I do. Don't worry, I'll be very good to you." Cody whined just like he used to, his puppy dog eyes fixed on her, constantly shaking her arm. But the woman who had always given in to his every whim was uncharacteristically silent this time, and even subtly created some distance between them. "Cody, I'm gonna find Jared soon. We should keep our distance. We're just senior and junior colleagues, teammates. It's not good to let people get the wrong idea." Cody froze at her words, his eyes instantly turning red. He asked in disbelief, "You're going to find him? Then what about me? We already had a ceremony. Besides, your dad really likes me and supports us being together." Hannah's head throbbed at his words. She was about to explain further when her phone rang. Using the call as an excuse, she ran off, leaving Cody standing there with a look of pure hatred on his face. Unlike Hannah's downward spiral, Jared adapted to the base quickly. In less than a month, he and the squadron leader had developed a strong rapport. A single glance was all they needed to understand each other. Today, after returning from a mission, Jared had a few minor scratches for a change. As soon as he got out of the vehicle, the squadron leader tossed him a tube of ointment. "Remember to put this on," he said teasingly. "Don't want you to scar that pretty face, or the higher-ups will have my head." Jared, now familiar with him, gave him a cool glance and took the ointment. "Thanks." Seeing his cold demeanor, the squadron leader couldn't help but feel curious. "Yesterday, that young woman from the communications team confessed to you, and you turned her down? What else?" Jared frowned slightly. He hadn't realized the outwardly stoic squadron leader was such a gossip in private. The squadron leader didn't know whether to advise him or not, and just left him with, "We're people who race against death. It wouldn't be a bad thing to have a real romance." With that, he whistled and walked away with a wave. Danak, a remnant of World War II, was known as a paradise for landmines, and that was no exaggeration. The situation here was even more severe than Jared had imagined. The base currently had 5 EOD teams on daily missions. In a continuous stream of operations, the bomb disposal experts from 2 of the teams had already been killed in action. And besides the underground mines, there were also bombs planted by terrorists in residential areas. The squadron leader had no choice but to request more personnel from home. After hanging up the phone, he suddenly turned around and looked at Jared with a wistful expression. "I hope the new guys are as good as you. That would make our lives a lot easier." Catching the joking tone in his voice, Jared offered a rare smile, a slight curve appearing on his lips. "Don't worry, the commander will hear your prayers." Jared had a cool and detached aura. He seemed cold, but he was actually warm-hearted. More than once, the squadron leader had seen Jared give food to the homeless people wandering outside the base, making sure they had enough to eat. Although some people at the base mocked him for his compassion, he believed a soldier needed a heart full of empathy. Time flew by. As the 2 of them continued their daily missions, the latest batch of EOD specialists from home had already boarded their plane. By the time they got out of the armored vehicle that evening, the new partners had already arrived at the base. Jared was taking off his gloves as he walked when he suddenly heard an urgent cry. "Jared!" He froze and turned to see Hannah standing not far behind him, her expression complicated as she stared at him. In that moment, Jared wanted to turn and pretend he didn't know her. But on second thought, they would be seeing each other all the time at the base. Making things too awkward wouldn't be good, and he didn't want to give people anything to gossip about. He didn't walk away, nor did he speak, just gave her a cold glance. Hannah's face lit up, and she hurried forward, wanting to grab him and say something. But as she got closer, she was overcome with a sense of panic, like a traveler returning home after a long time. While she hesitated, she saw Jared quickly step back, avoiding her as if she were the plague. The joy on her face instantly faded, and a mix of emotions churned inside her. She wanted to ask, "Why did you leave without a word?" Why did you run away on our wedding day? But in the end, her lips opened and closed, and all she could ask was, "Are you okay?" Jared's lips twitched into a cold, faint curve. Not dead. Seeing her silence, he started to walk away, but Hannah grabbed him. Her face showed a rare look of desperation and a hint of unwillingness, her voice trembling slightly. "Jared, we need to talk." As if afraid he would break free, her grip tightened. Even when Jared frowned in pain, she didn't loosen her hold in the slightest. "We have nothing to talk about. Let go." Jared's voice was cold, but his gaze was even colder, filled with undisguised hatred. Hannah abruptly let go, as if burned, and stammered, "You hate me that much? You despise me? Jared, why have you changed?" Freed, Jared quickly took a step back. He looked up and sneered, his opinion of this woman's shamelessness hitting a new low. But he didn't want any more involvement with her. He just shot her a glare and said with a warning tone, "This is the last time. If you lay a hand on me again, don't blame me for not being polite." With that, he turned and left without a second glance. Hannah was left standing there, looking lost. But Cody, who had been watching from the side for a while, took the opportunity to rush over and wrap his arms around her. "Hannah, I told you so, he doesn't love you at all. He left so decisively. He probably found someone else a long time ago. Don't be a fool and keep thinking about him. We're the perfect match." Hannah impatiently pushed him away, her tone earnest. "Cody, you shouldn't have come. The situation here is much more serious than you think. I advise you to go back. Before you're officially assigned, you still have time to return home." But Cody completely ignored her advice, even secretly resolving to use this opportunity to surpass Jared, to win his own honor and merit. The next day, when the new bomb disposal specialists were being assigned to teams, Jared was already out on a mission. Their objective today was to clear all the tripwire mines in the village of Moba. Last time, a tripwire here was accidentally triggered by an unsuspecting resident, resulting in several deaths and injuries. The leadership took this very seriously and personally assigned their team to complete the task. Time was tight and the mission was critical. One person carried a mine detector, while the other stood behind with a sniper rifle, guarding. They moved forward inch by inch, each step a battle between life and death. In less than half a day, they had cleared a large section of the minefield. Just then, another armored vehicle arrived, and more EOD teams got out. Hannah and Cody, along with several other teams, were also assigned to this minefield. Ignoring everyone's warnings, Cody cheered as soon as he got out of the vehicle, shouting what a great view, and bouncing around the minefield. Before the squadron leader could even yell at him, there was a muffled sound under Cody's foot as he triggered a remnant mine. The man was quick. He grabbed Jared and pulled him into an embrace, rolling several times. Hannah tackled Cody, and they tumbled over and over. The other teams scattered like birds. Fortunately, it was just a remnant mine with little power. After the smoke cleared, everyone brushed themselves off and got up. The furious squadron leader walked over and slapped Cody hard across the face. So hard that he staggered, half of his face swelling up instantly. "Who gave you the nerve to mess around in a minefield? Do you have a death wish? If you want to die, go back home. Don't drag others down with you." The squadron leader was like an enraged leopard, wishing he could slap the fool in front of him to death. Cody, terrified, stumbled back, clutching his swollen face and hiding behind Hannah, not daring to make a sound. Hannah wanted to say a few words in his defense, but when she saw the 3 stars on the other man's shoulder, she immediately shut her mouth. The squadron leader's eyes were bloodshot, his gaze as sharp as a blade. He spoke mercilessly in front of everyone. "This is a high-risk minefield, not a kindergarten. You could be killed at any moment. If you want to live, you'd better listen." Hannah, taking it all in, had her fists clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. But right now, she couldn't ask anything, couldn't say anything. The timing was wrong, the occasion was wrong. She could only suppress her frustration and begin clearing the mines. Unfortunately, she and Cody were assigned to the same team. The heavy sniper rifle was a bit too much for Cody to carry, so he was responsible for disarming. But as she watched the other teams pull far ahead of them, while Cody was still meticulously searching for mine wires like he was doing embroidery, Hannah grew anxious. For the first time, she regretted being teamed up with him. Her gaze fell on Jared at the very front. Seeing his swift and efficient movements, disarming a mine every few minutes, a hint of pride filled her eyes. The sun sank inch by inch, and soon it was dusk. The entire minefield was cleared. Jared's team had done the majority of the work. The squadron leader walked up to Hannah and gave her a dismissive glance, his eyes filled with contempt. Hannah, already fuming, wanted to go argue with him, but the teammates behind her held her back. Hannah, you guys were really slow today. Hannah knew their team's performance had been poor, but when her eyes fell on Cody's pitiful face, her anger flared even more. But she couldn't yell at him, so she just snorted and walked away. The jeers from the other teams followed. Flirting on a mission, they deserve to be yelled at. That guy is a jinx. He doesn't know anything and still comes on an overseas mission. Such bad luck. For the first time, Hannah ignored Cody, letting the other team's gossip behind her back. Back at the base, seeing Jared walking alone towards the dorms, Hannah seized the opportunity and chased after him. Jared, give me a few minutes. We need to talk. Hannah, are you deaf? We have nothing to talk about. We've already broken up. Do you have amnesia? Jared didn't give her a pleasant look. His voice was laced with sarcasm, and his words were like knives, stabbing straight into Hannah's heart. The woman's face instantly paled, whiter than snow. She paused, then relentlessly continued, Jared, I know I was wrong. Just give me a chance. Okay? Let's start over. Once we finish our deployment, we can go back home and get married. Or if you want to get married here, that's fine too. I'll listen to whatever you want, but you can't ignore me. Hannah babbled frantically, her voice gradually tinged with tears. But to Jared, it was all incredibly grating. He narrowed his eyes and sneered. Get married? He asked, taking a step closer. Hannah, who had been so sure of herself, now faltered under his cold gaze, backing away guiltily. Didn't you already have a ceremony with Cody? And now you come to me playing the victim? What gives you the right to say these things? Cody and I. Before she could finish, a sharp slap silenced her. With a crack, she swayed, almost falling. But there was no satisfaction in Jared's eyes. Get out. I don't want to see you, and I don't want to hear anything about you. Don't pollute my ears. Hannah was stunned. In the 7 years they had been together, they had never even had a real argument. But now, Jared had actually hit her. His eyes filled with a cold, distant look. She swallowed her pride and grabbed his sleeve. Her eyes filled with a broken pain, her gaze dim. I know I was wrong. I hurt you. I admit it. But you have to give me a chance to make it up to you. Jared, I'm begging you. Hannah pleaded in a low voice, her hoarse tone even cracking into a sob. At her words, Jared turned and stared at her. His face was like frost. Give up. With that, he pulled out his dagger and, with a swoosh, decisively sliced off the piece of his sleeve she was holding. It missed her hand by less than an inch. Jared showed no pity. He didn't even look at her as he turned and walked away, leaving Hannah to stand there, heartbroken. The next day, Hannah stormed into the office and demanded to switch team partners with the squadron leader. After hearing her request, the leader frowned impatiently. On what grounds do you demand I switch with you? Give me a reason. Hannah gritted her teeth and said, word by word, we used to be on the same team. We've worked together for years and have good chemistry. The man laughed as if he'd heard the funniest thing in the world. But the laughter didn't reach his eyes. Hannah's already small amount of confidence was completely shattered by his laughter. After a long pause, she added, we're a couple. We've been together for 7 years. Our chemistry, you're here on an overseas mission, not to date. If you want to deal with personal drama, go back home. We don't take cowards here. The squadron leader cut her off before she could finish, his eyes like shards of ice, staring her down. The next second, as if remembering something, he added, besides, he's already done with you. Have some self-respect. Stop clinging to him. With that, he strode away. Hannah was furious, gritting her teeth, but this was Danak. She had no connections and could only swallow her anger and accept the situation. Unable to switch teams, she had to grit her teeth and continue working with Cody. She had to endure his snail's pace while also fending off his constant confessions of love. All of this became a joke to the other teams. Back home, in their EOD unit besides Jared, the team's top elite, Hannah, was also considered a key member. But in Danak, because of Cody, Hannah was constantly ridiculed and mocked by others. The proud woman couldn't take it anymore and finally exploded after a mine-clearing mission one night. "Cody, if you can't handle it, just apply to go home. You're dragging me down with you. Because of you, our team is always last. You have no shame, but I do." Hannah's face was flushed with anger. She even threw her equipment far away. The usually gentle woman's sudden outburst scared Cody into silence. He just stood there with red eyes, sobbing, "Hannah, don't be mean to me.
I'm scared.
You always used to protect me." The other team members didn't intervene, just stood by and watched the show with amusement. Cody's eyes were red and his voice choked with sobs, but inside, he was filled with hatred. Back home, Hannah had been so attentive and caring, but as soon as they got to Danak, she changed. He was sure Jared was behind it, pulling strings in the background. "You just wait. Let's see how long you can act so high and mighty," he thought, gritting his teeth. Cody was determined to teach Jared a lesson, and soon the opportunity arose. With many new team members arriving, the base leadership decided to hold a welcome banquet. The long-dormant base was finally bustling with activity again. Several EOD teams sat together. The atmosphere at the banquet was lively, the initial awkwardness long gone. Cody's eyes darted around, and he decided to try his old trick again. He stood up with a glass of wine and toasted Jared. "Jared, thank you for looking out for me during this time. I've learned a lot. I toast to you. I'll drink it all, you can do as you please." With that, without waiting for Jared's response, he downed the glass of wine and even turned the empty glass upside down. Jared didn't respond, remaining coolly detached. Cody spoke again. "Jared, so you really hate me that much, you won't even drink my toast?" As he spoke, his eyes reddened, as if someone had bullied him. This one sentence made the atmosphere at the table instantly tense. Everyone's eyes fell on Jared, waiting for his reaction. The squadron leader at his side narrowed his eyes, a slight smile playing on his lips. "His stomach is bad. I'll drink this for him." But before he could move, the next second, Hannah also picked up a glass of wine, her expression grim. "I'll drink for him." The two men stared at each other across the air, sparks seeming to fly between them. The others at the table exchanged glances but dared not make a sound. A flash of jealousy crossed Cody's eyes, and his hands under the table were twisted red. The next second, Jared suddenly spoke to Cody. "You used that trick back home. Aren't you tired of it? I'm not drinking this. You're right, I do hate you. Just looking at you makes me sick." With that, the whole room fell silent, into an awkward hush. But Jared didn't stop. He stood up and said apologetically to everyone, "Fellow teammates, I have a chronic stomach condition. My partner will take this drink for me tonight. I'll treat everyone to dinner another day." Without waiting for a signal, the squadron leader picked up the glass and drained it, adding with a playful jab, "Treating us to dinner? You have to include me. Don't think you can get out of the one you owe me." This playful banter swept away the heavy mood at the table, and everyone burst into laughter. Jared gave the squadron leader a grateful look, and they exchanged a knowing smile. Seeing all this, Hannah's eyes stung, and she almost crushed the wine glass in her hand. He let another man drink for him. He smiled at another man. She poured glass after glass of wine into her mouth as if it were water. But tonight, the wine had lost its usual sweetness and tasted as bitter as medicine. The tightness in her chest almost suffocated her. Scene after scene from the past flashed before her eyes, and she couldn't help but think of that time she had pressured him to drink. She remembered Jared's pale face then, and a sharp pain shot through her heart. Only now did she understand how deeply her past actions had hurt Jared. She sat across from him, lost in sorrow, while Cody next to her seethed with hatred. After the welcome banquet, the EOD team's work returned to normal. Hannah desperately wanted to make amends and sought every opportunity to get close to Jared, but he gave her no chance at all. One day, the water heater in Jared's dorm broke. The other male team members were out on a mission. Only Hannah was in writing a report. Seeing him with his clothes and wash basin, she guessed what had happened and stood up to call him over. "My dorm is also a single. You can wash up in my room." As she spoke, she pulled a key from her pocket and handed it to him. Jared didn't move. He didn't want to owe Hannah any favors, but the sticky sweat all over him was unbearable. While he was hesitating, the door next to him opened, and the squadron leader walked out, shirtless and wearing camouflage pants. "Jared, come to my place. I've already set the water temperature for you." The man's tan skin was covered in sweat, glistening, his 8-pack abs clearly visible. Jared silently averted his gaze, his heart suddenly racing. Hannah's face darkened, and she frowned, displeased. "I said it first. Why is Captain Fan trying to steal this too?" The squadron leader smiled lazily, but his words were ice cold. "As his partner, it's my duty to protect his personal safety and prevent anyone with ulterior motives from getting close to him." "What do you mean by that?" Hannah's eyes flashed with anger, as if she were about to start a fight. "Isn't my meaning obvious?" The squadron leader ignored her anger and even walked forward with a smile to take Jared's wash basin. Whether it was intentional or not, Jared glanced at Hannah and said, "Thanks, but no thanks. I'll go to the captain's place." Hannah watched helplessly as Jared followed the squadron leader into his room. Even if she didn't want to admit it, it was clear that Jared no longer had any good feelings for her. The smile he once reserved for her was no longer hers alone, he gave it to others. Hannah was no longer Jared's only choice. At this thought, it felt as if countless ice picks were stabbing into her heart. It was cold and painful. She knew this man was slipping away from her, but she was powerless to stop it. Frustrated, she kicked the wall again, ignoring the bloodstains on her knuckles. She waited resentfully outside the door, pacing back and forth. After a long while, Jared opened the door and walked out. Just then, a surprised "huh" came from the side. Cody and the other teams, having completed their mission, stood there, staring strangely at the scene. Looking at Jared, his face flushed and his short hair dripping wet, Cody asked with malicious intent, "Jared, did you just take a shower in Captain Fan's dorm?" He was smiling, with no apparent malice, but his question made the other team's expressions change several times. A truly spectacular sight. Jared, familiar with his tactics, didn't explain. He just nodded to the crowd and turned to leave. Instead, it was Hannah who spoke up to explain that his shower was broken. The others exchanged glances but didn't say much. Cody, on the other hand, happily linked arms with Hannah and asked excitedly, "Hannah, have you finished your report? I still want to be on your team tomorrow." Hannah impatiently pushed him away, her brow furrowed tightly, her face filled with displeasure. "Cody, I was wrong about you. I never thought you were the type to stir up trouble. No wonder my relationship with Jared got worse and worse after you joined the EOD unit. Stay away from me from now on." She gave Cody a deep look, her eyes filled with disgust. At this moment, she hated her own stupidity. Even though Cody desperately tried to explain as he followed her, she ignored him. After all this time in Danak, Jared finally got his first day off. Early in the morning, the squadron leader came to his dorm and asked him what his plans were for the day. Jared paused for a few seconds and shook his head helplessly. "This place is full of armed forces. It's better to just stay on base." The squadron leader raised an eyebrow, not surprised, and sighed. "I knew you were a homebody. It's rare that I have free time today, so I'll take you out for a walk." After breakfast, the squadron leader borrowed a jeep and drove Jared out. Seeing that they weren't heading towards the city, he asked quizzically, "Where are we going?" The man didn't answer, just laughed softly. The sound of his laughter was carried far by the wind. Like a dandelion seed, it landed in Jared's heart, light and warm. After driving for a while, the car finally stopped in front of a house. Soon, 2 brown puppies came running out at the sound. As soon as they saw the squadron leader, they joyfully pounced on him. Even the usually calm Jared was a bit stunned by this scene. Where did you get Shiba Inus? The squadron leader's lips curved. He picked up one puppy and placed it in Jared's arms, then picked up the other and slowly petted it. Found them on a mission, he said. Their mother was killed by a landmine. Dogs aren't allowed on base, so I have them fostered here. The puppy in Jared's arms was very well behaved, gently licking his palm. The man's already soft heart melted completely. He picked up the puppy and began to play with it happily. The squadron leader took a few bags of food from the car and put some in front of the two puppies. Watching them eat with relish, a smile once again appeared on Jared's face. The squadron leader across from him also smiled contentedly. After a long while, as if remembering something, Jared suddenly asked, "How did you know I like dogs?" The squadron leader didn't answer. A sudden glint of a smile in his dark eyes. "It's in your file. Loves dogs, fears cats." The files for the EOD unit wouldn't be that detailed, would they? Jared asked suspiciously. Seeing he couldn't hide it any longer, the squadron leader had to confess. "All right, I'll tell you. I asked your commander and he told me." Seeing his frankness, Jared didn't know what to say. He could only rub the puppy's chubby body, but the turmoil in his heart didn't lessen at all. He knew the squadron leader was looking out for him. When he first arrived in Danak, his reserved personality and handsome looks had made many of the older soldiers dislike him and want to cause trouble for him. This kind of thing was common in the military, and the leaders often turned a blind eye. It was the squadron leader who had beaten them all up and then partnered with him for bomb disposal, which finally quieted them down. The atmosphere between them suddenly became a bit strange. The squadron leader looked up at the sky and smiled. "I'll bring you here again when I have the chance. It looks like it's gonna rain soon, we should head back." At the mention of rain, Jared's heart trembled, and he quickly got into the car. By the time they reached the base, the sky had already darkened, and distant thunder rumbled. Seeing Jared trembling, his legs weak and his face pale, the squadron leader didn't hesitate. He bent down, swept him into his arms, and hurried towards the dorms. Unexpectedly, he saw Hannah at the entrance. The moment she saw Jared being held so closely by another man, the fire in Hannah's heart ignited. She lost all reason and rushed forward, punching the man. The squadron leader, caught off guard, took the hit squarely, and blood instantly seeped from the corner of his mouth. Enraged, Jared shoved Hannah hard, demanding furiously, "Are you insane?" Unprepared, Hannah staggered and fell to the ground. She turned her head and looked at the man before her in disbelief, the anger in her chest drowning out all reason. She spoke word by word, her voice hoarse, like a wild animal's roar. "You pushed me for him?" The squadron leader's pupils constricted, but surprisingly, he didn't step forward. Instead, he stared intently at the trembling Jared. The man lifted his face. His pale face was illuminated by his bright eyes, which now held a bone-chilling coldness. He glared at Hannah as if looking at a dead person, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he lunged forward and began to punch and kick Hannah, each blow landing with a sickening thud. The man kicked with all his might, as if venting his frustration. His eyes were red, and his pale face had turned an unnatural shade of crimson. Hannah gritted her teeth and took the beating without fighting back, only a series of muffled groans escaping her lips. Jared only stopped when the woman was lying on the ground, unable to get up. He ignored her earlier questions, his voice filled with rage. "Stay away from me. You disgust me. If you spout any more nonsense, I don't mind making you bleed." The viciousness in his eyes made Hannah's pupils shrink. She regretted her impulsive outburst, blurting out what was in her heart. But Jared showed no intention of explaining anything. She had thought that even if he didn't love her anymore, there was still hatred, which meant he still cared about her. But now Jared only felt disgust for her. She lay on the ground, letting the heavy rain wash over her. Her trembling lips moved for a long time, repeatedly apologizing. "I'm sorry. I was just so angry. That's why." Jared didn't respond. Just as he was about to turn away, His legs gave out and he fell backward. The squadron leader caught him steadily from behind. Throughout this, he didn't intervene, only taking Jared back to his dorm after he had finished beating the woman. In that moment, Hannah knew that she and Jared could never go back. She tilted her head back, closed her eyes, her lips trembling slightly. A closer look would reveal she was silently mouthing the name Jared. But no matter how many times she called, the man who had once loved her so deeply would never forgive her. Hannah suddenly laughed, and as she laughed, tears streamed from the corners of her eyes, mixing with the pouring rain and falling into the dirt. Cody saw everything, his heart filled with anxiety, and he schemed to cause trouble for Jared. One day, the team members were on a break. Due to a shortage of supplies at the base, they had to go to the city for all their procurement, and several of them had to go armed. Security was lax in Danak, and street robberies and murders were common. Even with caution, they ran into some trouble in the street. A group of people saw they were all carrying guns and, mistaking them for some armed faction, suddenly opened fire. The pedestrians on the street screamed and scattered in chaos. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, followed by a cry of "Watch out!" Jared was pulled into an embrace, followed by a woman's muffled groan. He looked up and saw that the person protecting him was Hannah. His expression darkened. He glanced at the chaotic scene and, with a frown, helped the injured woman up and pushed her into the car. A few minutes later, when the police arrived, order was restored on the street. Once they were all in the car, Hannah, who had been closing her eyes, suddenly opened them and asked Cody coldly, "Why did you shoot at Jared?" The moment she spoke, the previously chattering car fell silent. Cody's mouth fell open in shock. "Hannah, what are you talking about? How could I do something like that? Don't make things up. I saw everything. Don't try to deny it." Seeing the fierce look on her face, Cody said pitifully, I really didn't." A team member, seeing Cody's pained expression, also chimed in, "Hannah, could you have seen it wrong? He has no reason to." Hannah blurted out, "He does," but she couldn't bring herself to say the rest. Her gaze fell on Jared, and she softened her tone, speaking gently. "Jared, you saw it with your own eyes, right? Tell the truth. I'll be your witness." Everyone's eyes turned to Jared. As they urged him on, he curled his lips into a faint smile and said lightly, "Hannah, what do you want me to say? Wasn't it because you two were fighting that Cody shot at me?" The team members all knew that Jared never lied. So, when he said this, the way they looked at the two of them changed completely. They all started advising them, no matter how much you two fight, don't play with other people's lives. Someone even asked Cody, "Did you get in through connections? Your character is too low. What are you going to do next time you two fight? Throw a landmine at us? You two should just apply to go back home. Being with you is like being with a ticking time bomb, more dangerous than a minefield." Cody panicked and instinctively defended himself. I didn't, but no one paid him any attention. They all talked at once, their words growing uglier. Cody's face turned red with anger, and he glared at Jared, wishing he could swallow him whole. Hannah, however, had fallen unusually silent. She didn't defend herself, just stared at Jared. Only now did she truly understand what it felt like to be stabbed in the back. But she had no right to cry out in pain because this was what she owed him. The wound on her arm was faintly bleeding. The hastily wrapped white bandage was already soaked with blood. The car drove for an unknown amount of time, and by the time they got back to the base, it was getting dark. Hannah, having lost a lot of blood, was hoping to use this as a chance to get a few words alone with Jared. But the man just gave her an impatient look and said coldly, "Even if you died in front of me, I wouldn't spare you a glance. Stop making trouble in the future." A bitter smile appeared on Hannah's face. She never knew Jared could be so sharp-tongued. His words went straight for the heart, a trembling pain at its core, yet she was powerless against him. Jared walked away without a shred of mercy, leaving only Cody to follow behind and support her, wanting to take her to the infirmary. But Hannah's face was cold as she shouted, "Get away from me, you vicious man. I was wrong about you." Her face was filled with loathing, her eyes looking at him as if he were a cockroach. Cody was both hurt and sad, but seeing the blood all over her, he could only swallow his anger and take her there. Jared, walking ahead, had a sarcastic smile on his lips. So Hannah's affection was that cheap. Before, for Cody, she had given him all her care and kept all the hurt for herself. Now everything had changed. When you love her, she treats you like dirt. When you don't love her, she cries and begs you to come back. In the past, 9 out of 10 items of clothing in her closet were bought by Jared. He was a man of few words, but he was genuinely good to Hannah. He bought her t-shirts in the summer and jackets in the winter, covering everything from her underwear to her outerwear. He spent little on himself, with most of his salary going to her. Even when people joked that he was keeping a woman, he would just smile and not argue. But now the object of her care had changed. She was afraid of the coldness and hatred in his eyes. It was more painful than being killed. Thinking of their sweet past and the current situation, her eyes reddened with tears again. Just then, her phone rang. She answered it, and it was her father's voice. "When are you coming back? You and Cody need to settle things, right? His family has been to our house several times. It's not right to keep dragging it on." Hannah immediately retorted impatiently, "Dad, can you please stop adding to the chaos? I don't love him. I love Jared. That ceremony with Cody was just for show. It was fake. I can't possibly marry him." She patiently explained over the phone, completely unaware that Cody, eavesdropping outside the door, already had a twisted expression, his hands clenching the lunchbox so tightly his veins bulged. But right now, he couldn't confront Hannah directly. A plan was quietly forming in his mind. The next day, reporters from the Danak National Channel came to the base for an interview. The entire team was scheduled to be interviewed one by one in the office, except for Hannah in the infirmary and Jared on the training grounds. It was supposed to be a 15-minute interview for each person, but when it was Cody's turn, he took up half an hour. Fortunately, the team knew his antics and didn't make a big deal out of it. No one paid attention to this small interruption, but the next day, as Jared was heading to the training grounds, he was stopped by a female reporter. "Are you Jared?" The reporter's Mandarin was good, with almost no accent. Jared nodded. "Can I take a moment of your time for an interview?"
Sorry, I'm busy.
"I'm not doing any interviews." With that, he started to walk away, but froze when he heard her next words. "Aren't you tired of being caught between two soldiers?" The reporter's meaningful expression was like a whip cracking over him. But he had training to complete and no time to argue with her, so he could only leave in silence. Seeing Jared's silence, the reporter became even more convinced that what she had heard was the whole truth, and a triumphant smile appeared on her lips. A few days later, the squadron leader's EOD team received a new mine-clearing mission. A hidden minefield had been discovered in the eastern region near the mountains. Several forest rangers had been killed in succession, and the higher-ups had ordered them to clear it urgently. The mission was urgent, and Hannah, her wound just healed, was also drafted. But this time, the minefield was not on flat ground, but on a wet, soft mountainside. They had to not only clear the hidden mines, but also be wary of landslides. A dozen people spent 2 days in the wilderness, covered in mud, before they finally cleared all the hidden mines. Just as everyone was cheering, Jared frowned. "Something's not right." The squadron leader counted and said grimly, "Is one missing?" Jared nodded. But when he was clearing the mines, the count was correct. How could one be missing? Could it have fallen back into the minefield? He thought quickly, already preparing to go back in. The squadron leader started to follow, but Jared stopped him. The mountain could slide at any moment.
I'm faster.
"I'll go alone." The squadron leader paused, then nodded. Right now, completing the mission was the top priority. Everything else had to wait. Just then, Cody uncharacteristically followed him. The others didn't even have time to stop him. The minutes ticked by. The sky darkened, looking like a storm was about to break. Seeing everyone waiting anxiously, Hannah stood up abruptly to go search for them, but the squadron leader stopped her. Just then, Cody's weak crying came from behind him. He sobbed as he wiped his tears. "Jared," he fell down the mountain. Everyone gasped, their faces as pale as death. Behind that slope was a steep valley. A fall from there was certain death. On one side was a mountain on the verge of sliding, and on the other was Jared, who had fallen. Hannah was the first to request permission. "I have to go save him." Without a word, the squadron leader struck her from behind, knocking her out. He then said to the others, "You guys head back to base and report to the higher-ups. I'm going in to find him." With that, he disappeared into the woods. The other teams didn't dare to delay and drove back to the base. The next morning, 2 trucks carrying a search and rescue team stopped at the entrance of the forest. A group of people began to search the mountain inch by inch. Meanwhile, back at the base, the female reporter was confronting the leadership with a hostile expression. "There is no need to rescue this male soldier. His conduct is disgraceful. He shouldn't be in the army at all and should be kicked out." The leader condemned her righteously. "Ms. Lena, you have published false information without any investigation. I will be reporting this to your superiors." He threw a newspaper on the ground. The headline screamed, "Disgraceful conduct in EOD team." It wasn't until dark that the search and rescue team returned to the base with Jared and the squadron leader. The first thing Jared did upon seeing the leader was to drag his injured leg and salute weakly. "The last hidden mine has been cleared. Mission complete." The leader looked at the disheveled man before him and nodded in relief, telling him to go and rest immediately. Jared didn't see the newspaper until that night. He was so angry he jumped out of bed, ready to confront the reporter. But on second thought, this was definitely Cody's doing. Jared was stunned for a moment, then felt a sense of resignation. The man had gone crazy. As if remembering something, he took off the micro camera from his collar and handed it to the team leader. "This incident was not an accident. If I hadn't fallen into that cave, I would probably be dead at the bottom of that cliff." The team leader took the camera, his face as black as ink, exuding a cold aura. Hannah had been watching his every move from outside. Unfortunately, there was no turning back time. She gave Jared one last deep look and quietly left. The next day, the base filed a lawsuit against the national channel's female reporter, accusing her of slandering Jared and the entire EOD team's reputation, and demanding a public apology. When the reporter saw the video from the camera, showing Cody trying to harm Jared in the minefield, she realized she had been nothing but a tool in his scheme. Filled with immediate regret, she not only clarified all the rumors in the newspaper, but also recorded an apology video and sent it to Jared, begging for his forgiveness. Jared only said one thing: "The news is not about rumors or slander, but about the truth. Please be careful with your words." After this incident, Cody also received his sentence. By then, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. "It's all his fault. If it weren't for him, why would Hannah leave me? I was forced. I was forced," he shouted as he angrily smashed things in his dorm, his hysterical state far from normal. The final verdict from the unit was to send him back to the country to serve his prison sentence. Disheartened, Hannah also submitted her application to return home. Before she left, Hannah wanted to say goodbye to Jared, but he declined. Dejected, Hannah boarded the plane back home and returned to the EOD unit in disgrace. Her performance on this overseas mission had been mediocre. Upon her return, she received no commendations or promotions and became the laughingstock of the EOD unit. Her father even mocked her for losing both the man and the money. A year later, the heartbroken Hannah died honorably in the line of duty. By then, Jared had earned his own Distinguished Service Cross.